I'm gonna put my headset down and let you do your thing, man.
All right, good luck.
All right.
Okay, so I'm observing Hutch now. And hello to everyone who's not only watching my video, I'm doing a local recording now, but I'm also keeping an eye on Hutch's Twitch chat too, so shout out to you guys. So Hutch is playing a rather conservative opening, I'd say, here with e3 on move 3, just defending the pawn on c4. He is blocking in his bishop on c1, so I slightly dislike this, although this is a playable line for white. And let's see how his opponent responds. His opponent's playing a line called the Slob Defense. Yeah, black develops the bishop to g4. Usually, you want to be wary of how your bishops interact with your pawns in the opening. So you can see that his opponent is getting his bishop out and then trading it for the knight on f3, and then playing e6. So black made a point not to play e6 when the bishop was back on c8. So apparently black realized that they didn't want to block the bishop in. Now, Hutch does have what we'd refer to as the advantage of the two bishops. So the bishop pair, which are these guys right here, which most good players will tell you is a significant advantage, especially as the game goes along. But we're a long ways from anything decisive happening. Both sides are just bringing their pieces out. Yeah, bishop d2, good developing move here by Hutch. I expect black to castle pretty soon, probably bring the knight to d7. And I say that nothing decisive is happening yet because a lot of times in these d4 openings, you do get more locked pawn structures. And you can see here that black is making the first pawn capture, taking on c4. I like this for Hutch because you can see that he was able to develop his bishop in one fell swoop here to c4. A lot of times it's better for black to delay this capture for a moment until white moves their bishop out and then take on c4. So already I like this for Hutch. Both sides castling. Okay, so in a typical game, after both sides have castled, assuming that material is equal, that's a very good moment to try to find a plan. So I'm very curious what Hutch is going to do here. If he's going to try to advance in the center, he does have two center pawns against his opponent's one, so he might try to advance e4, or he might just try to bring his rooks to the center. You can see he's playing rook ac1. He might follow with rook fd1 in the near future. So far, so good. I did watch a video that International Master Danny Wrench and Hutch did recently, and I was just kind of scrolling through the games, and I saw one game that Hutch played extremely well from the white side, and I think so far this game is kind of mirroring that. Okay, so going back for a second, we just got this exchange on d5. I don't know that I would have made that trade if I were Hutch, because his opponent gets to slightly improve his structure by bringing this pawn to d5, and now Hutch does back the bishop off. Okay, so knight to f6. Now, with this particular pawn structure over here, those three highlighted pawns for white versus the four highlighted pawns for black. Oh, by the way, I'm saying highlighted, but you guys can't see my highlights, of course. Only the people watching my video later will be able to see that, so I'll try to speak in as general terms as possible. But we would say that white has a minority on the queen side. So if you look at the A file through the D file, the left half of the board, Hutch has less pawns than his opponent over there. So it would make a lot of sense for him to try to attack that structure, which I'll show in analysis later. Okay, so Hutch played queen f5, but then after his opponent played g6, he went right back to f3. Yeah, I don't like that. That looks like it was misassessed by him. And even after queen f5, he wasn't threatening queen takes h7 because black's knight was guarding the h7 square. So, bit of a misstep there, but the position is still fine for white. One thing I'll probably be talking a lot about is time management. Those who watch my videos will know that I constantly harp on time management. And, you know, I think Hutch is managing his clock pretty well right now. He's got 7 minutes. We're 16 moves into the game. He just really needs to find a plan at the moment. These kind of ticky-tack threats that aren't even really threats, like queen f5, are not going to cut it. And black is playing very solid, too. So there we go. All right, I like to see that move. b4, excellent. So this is this plan I was referring to earlier, and I'm going to ask Hutch after the game if he knows about this plan. It's called the minority attack. So you're trying to use less pawns to attack more. The idea would be to get that pawn up to b5 to try to trade it for the pawn on c6 and somehow create a weakness in black's structure. Okay, I think, yeah, that's the best move that Hutch has played all game so far. Rook b1, he just defends the pawn on b4. a6, and let's see if Hutch goes ahead and plays a4 after this, because eventually he would like to get this pawn up to b5, so a4 is going to be the way forward to try to assist that. Queen c7. Okay, so maybe black was a bit uncomfortable with the white rook opposing the queen there. Yeah, now white gets the other rook over. This is nice. So Hutch is definitely playing on the correct side of the board now. Let's see if he goes ahead and plays b5. He does. There we go. Okay, this trade is favorable for white. So you can see that Hutch is initiating some pawn tension here between the b5 and c6 pawns. If he can capture on c6 and black recaptures with his pawn, that will be a long-term weakness that hopefully Hutch can try to attack. And black doesn't want to capture the pawn on b5 because Hutch would take with his bishop and he'd be skewering the queen on d7 and the rook on e8. Okay, this is a very technical game. So now Hutch wants to try to bring about long-term pressure on the pawn on c6. He might try to double up the rooks on the c-file. He may want to think about moving the queen back to d1. I don't think the queen is doing a whole lot on f3, so maybe moving it back to d1, kind of a strategic retreat, try to get it over to a4, makes sense. Yeah, rook b6, that's a direct way to attack the pawn. The rook is undefended here, so he does have to pay some mind to that. And black is trying to attack it immediately, bishop to d8. Yep, rook a6. So this is what we call a backward pawn, the pawn on c6 for black, meaning it has no pawns on either side of it to defend it. Okay, it requires the defense of the black pieces. You can see the black queen on b7 and the rook on c8 are required to keep this pawn guarded. And that's not a great situation. Usually in chess, you don't want to have your pieces guard your pawns. You'd rather have your pawns guard your pawns, so your pieces can do other more meaningful things. Okay, so here Hutch has a threat. I'm hoping some of you see it, and he's going to have a chance to pull it off if he spots it. Notice the alignment of the black queen on b7 and the rook on c8. That gives Hutch the opportunity for bishop a6. That's going to win the exchange, we would call it, winning a rook for a minor piece. He still has it here. Bishop to a6. Ooh, okay, so it looks like he's going for perhaps a pawn push plan in the center. Yeah, both sides are overlooking this possibility for white. Bishop coming in. Yeah, f3 is, I think, an indication. Oh, there we go. Okay. I was just about to say f3 is maybe an indication that Hutch is going to go in a completely different direction in this position after he was so promisingly playing on the queen side. But now he's on the right track again. Bishop a6. Good. And he'll pick up that rook on c8. Now, this is a significant enough material advantage. Hutch has just won 2 points of material. This is enough to win the game with. Provided he plays reasonably from here, he should win every time. So let's see what his technique is like. Famous saying in chess, the hardest thing to do is win a one game. I don't know if I agree with that all the time, but if your opponent is determined, they can put up a lot of defense, even in positions like this where the material situation is going against them. I'm just laughing at the chat right now because you guys are following Hutch's reactions. Apparently he was a little confused not long ago. Okay, I'm curious what he's going to be doing with this rook a2 move. So maybe trying to triple up, or double up rather. Yeah, and get the triple attack on the pawn on c6. That pawn is a goner. There's nowhere that black can go to get another defender on it. So yeah, rook takes c6 incoming. And a primary rule of playing when you're ahead in material is your strategy should most of the time just be to trade down. You want to win war of attrition style, right? So Hutch is definitely welcoming trades here because the more pieces he can swap off, the less defensive resources, counterattacking resources that black will have. So yeah, this trade of rooks, good for white. Let's see if black agrees to the queen trade even. And black does. Okay, so now Hutch has some ideas, maybe attacking the knight or just going after the d5 pawn, rook c5. Don't want to play rook d6 because that would lose to knight takes d6. So got to pay attention to our loose pieces. In fact, this series I mentioned before, Chess Fundamentals, that I made a while back, the very first video is about undefended pieces. Oh, and here you go. Just as I was saying that, look at that. Rook takes f6 was possible. Hutch missed it. His opponent missed it because he played bishop f8. And then maybe he saw it. He played bishop right back to g7. Those of you who are watching and want to improve your chess, you got to get a handle on undefended pieces. That should be your primary goal if you're still a poor chess player or a novice chess player right now. Because I'm telling you, from coaching so many players and just playing through thousands of games between players at the rating level Hutch is at and even higher, I see these sort of things happen all the time. Just easy opportunities for one side to take a free piece. You don't want to shoot yourself in the foot like that. That's like, unforced errors in tennis. You got to minimize those opportunities and maximize them when you get a chance to exploit them in your opponent's position. Someone said, John Loki said Hutch is a poor player. I meant to say novice player. Hutch is fine. Hutch is fine. Okay, this is good. So d6. This pawn probably roll into d7. Black is, I think, trying to defend the queening square. d8. But look at that. Nice move. All right. Driving the knight out. Now he can give a check, but maybe he has some way to craft a mating net here, because notice that the black king, the only escape square, if white does deliver that check, is to g5, but there's this bishop that can come to d2. So yeah, Hutch has a checkmate in 2 right there. Let's just go back for a second. So he could have played rook h8 check, king g5, and then bishop d2 would have been checkmate. There were no available squares. So Hutch decided to play rook c7 instead, attacking the pawn on f7. That's still good, because that pawn is indefensible. But yeah, he had a quicker way to finish that off. On the whole, though, I don't want to give Hutch too much praise before this game is over, but I really like the way he's handled this one. Just hope he can bring it on home. His time is still pretty good. He's got 2 minutes, 15 seconds. The most annoying piece to battle against, especially if you're in time pressure, is the knight, though, right? So, okay, here's a little trick. So this knight is on the edge of the board. Its mobility is restricted over here. If Hutch plays bishop d4, that knight will be corralled. That's a very striking image right there, but yeah, there we go. Bishop to d4. I wonder if this is a pattern Hutch has seen before. So I say corralled because look at all these squares that the knight could go to. I'm making the highlights there, but all of those squares were taken away. And his opponent resigns. Great game by Hutch. Excellent. I've got some questions for him and some feedback on that one I'm very curious about, but great to see him get a victory in that first game.